Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the regular meeting of the Abington School Committee on Tuesday, October 23rd in the Abington Middle High School Library. I ask everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we're going to have a public hearing on school choice participation for the 2019-20 school year. Looking for a motion to start the public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
So we're required under Massachusetts general law each year to consider this choice option for our public school. We're also required to have a public hearing and listen to people's feelings about whether we should or shouldn't opt in or out of school choice. If we don't opt out of it annually, we're in it. Later in the evening, I'm going to ask, and I have data to support this recommendation about our growing population size. People are well aware of it. I'm going to recommend that the committee decide not to participate in school choice for this coming school year. And if the committee's ready tonight for that vote, they can take that vote. And if they're not, they could wait till the following month, whatever the will of this board is. So that's the background behind it. And this time, if there are people that wanted to be heard.
Would anybody like to speak about the matter? Seeing none, at this time I'll ask for a motion to exit the public hearing. And
I'll make a motion. I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So now officially begins our meeting. Hearing of visitors, would anybody have anything they'd like to address the committee on before we get started? Shannon? Can you come up to the podium for me? Thank you.
I have 7 copies of this if the school committee wants to share. Just some information that I brought with me about positive behavior classroom strategies. I'm Shannon Tenori, 171 Road. I'm the parent of a 5th grader. And I just wanted to ask and talk about specifically classroom behavior management charts, the color clip systems that are still being used in some classrooms. And I wanted to talk about how at the Woodsdale School they used morning meeting, which is a part of responsive classroom. And it's really, it's a K-8 evidence-based program that, focuses on engaging academics and, positive community developmental awareness. It leads to higher academic achievement, improved school climate. I saw awesome things. Mr. Haas spoke here last year about it and how the students were engaged every single day, talking to each other about their homes, about their families, about things that they did over the weekend, about feelings, concerns. It really was a positive climate. I know my son's classroom last year there were no behavior clip charts. This year there is one. They're talking about detentions, and recess was being taken away at the start of the year, but then they discovered that was against the wellness policy. So now the teachers are talking to the students about what they're going to do for what I think are minor infractions, and that in other schools they're thought of as minor infractions, like talking out of turn or talking in the hallway upon leaving gym class, forgetting homework once maybe. And I do know that in my son's classroom I just discovered that I thought green was the highest level. I think everybody starts at green every day, and I had just assumed, green means go, so you're good to go. and then they move down from there. But I just learned that there's a purple level, which is better than green, and the students seem to be unaware of how they can become purple, and no one so far in the last week of October has been moved up to purple. So no one is allowed to be achieving the best, but yet have had, some things removed, like recess. So I just think that was such a positive culture at Woodsdale, and I'm hoping that can, come over to the middle school, where these students really are still elementary students, and they are not 7th and 8th graders. And I just wanted to bring that up.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, really, can I say something first? So Shannon, just to thank you, first of all. The recess that you mentioned, though, I just want to confirm, because I've heard they know it's not policy, and that's been addressed. All right, so, okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Okay, God, I'm sorry.
So have you, has there been any follow-up with the school and kind of conversations with some of your concerns?
Well, there are other parents that have concerns. I think that what the number of us are wondering is how we can be involved with helping the grade 5 and 6 team come up with what's best for the kids, and not just the team coming up with what's best, but to have some parent input and possibly adjustment counselors or child behavior specialists, because child development teachers are not necessarily developmental experts.
I know that the middle school administration and teachers care quite a bit.
I do too.
And you've been heard on your concerns, and I want to engage them in your conversations out of the spirit of how much they care and the good work they do with the kids. So.
I'll just add, I would agree about the specifics of like the clip charts, that would be more of like a building issue, but I think that some of what you're saying resonates with the transition piece from 4th grade to 5th grade, and just the idea that, I struggle myself with being really grateful for this beautiful facility that our 5th graders get to use, but then developmentally 5th graders aren't quite as big. Particularly, I think by the time they go to 6th, nothing in 6th grade, but they have that 1 year of like acclimation that they feel a little bit better. So I think something that maybe we can think about is what can we do to make that transition seem a little less. I think it's hard for parents, and it's particularly hard for kids too. Some acclimate easy, and others it's we lose that piece of them being little still. But still, I've said this before, I think about promoting that independence. We want to make sure we're not coddling too much, but being respectful of the fact that their feelings are still little, the feelings of little elementary school students. I don't know, am I off the mark at all on that? Does that relate to, I'm thinking of it from a committee level.
Yeah, no, and I've heard things for particularly 5th grade, where there seems to be a struggle with 5th graders. Then I don't know the exact reason. I haven't got specifics, but when it's that many and it's focused on one grade, it seems to be like it could be part of the transition from Woodsdale to this building, and just the newness of it, the largeness of it, and overwhelming them at times.
And silly things like lockers, opening of lockers, some kids get it right away and others don't, and that can create anxiety, and sometimes teachers aren't even aware that the 5th grader hasn't been able to open their locker. So I think that there's just little things that are big deal to kids that are in a new setting sometimes, and that we could probably think about other ways to make that transition easier.
And I just want to say, I know that I'm the only one that comes and stands here, but it's at the request of often a number of parents. So I'm just the one who's willing to come up here and talk about what we're all talking about, privately.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks.
Shannon.
Does anybody else like to speak? Okay. Moving on to the reading and approval of records. First, our September 25th regular school committee meeting will be up first. And once the committee has a chance to review it, look for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
And now the approval of minutes from our executive session that occurred after the regular school committee meeting on September 25th as well. Same thing after you review, if I have a motion to approve or reject.
Make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Abstain.
Before we start, I'm going to hit on some unfinished business. If you look through our minutes from last month, you'll see that we had nomination for a school committee representative to the Abington CAM Board of Directors. At the end of that vote, I incorrectly mentioned that there was no majority, so we did not have a representative. As it turns out, with talking with lawyers after the fact, with an abstention that occurred, there was 3 actual people voting. So on a 2-to-1 vote, Jim Connolly was in fact voted in as the Abington CAM representative from the school committee. Abington CAM was notified shortly after I told them that we didn't have one. I corrected it with them. They've already had their first meeting. So I just wanted to clear that up. The minutes are correct because that's actually what happened, but I'm fixing it now. So just let everybody know. I apologize. It was some new stuff to me too. So we got it all squared away now though. Moving on, I just want to go over some communications that we've received. One is from the United States Department of Education, which I know Dr. Sullivan spoke last month about the process. A couple days later, we actually received the award. We were awarded the blue ribbon. I'm just going to read a quick note from an email that was sent to Superintendent Schaefer. It's my pleasure to inform you that Abington High School and Abington School District has been recognized as an exemplary achievement gap closing school, National Blue Ribbon School for 2018 by the United States Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. The National Blue Ribbon Schools Program Award recognizes public and private elementary, middle, and high schools where students either achieve very high learning standards or are making notable improvements in closing the achievement gap. Since 1982, the U.S. Department of Education has sought out and celebrated great American schools. The National Blue Ribbon School Award affirms the hard work of students, educators, families, and communities in creating a safe and welcoming school where students master challenging content. Once again, congratulations, Dr. Sullivan, Ms. Local, I know you're here. I think I saw you. And your entire staff, the entire district, congratulations. I don't know if anybody has anything else they'd like to add.
That's great.
Awesome. Yay.
You've already started decorating the library.
Yeah. Following that up, Kate Casey, who is the wellness coordinator now, is that her full title? She received the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association Wellness Coordinator of the Year Award. I want to read just really brief a blurb that she received from the MIAA. Dear Kate, it is my pleasure to inform you that you have been selected to receive the Wellness Coordinator of the Year Award at our 22nd Annual MIAA Wellness Summit at the Doubletree Hotel in Westboro. The selection committee was very impressed with your innovative and creative activities and programming that you have implemented at your school. It goes on, but again, the gist of it is congratulations to Kate Casey on this award. Very well deserved, and commend her for all the work she does. Moving on, report of the Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment. Dr. Fedorowicz is here to discuss 2018 MCAS performance results.
Good evening, everybody. I'm here presenting the NCAS data tonight with the department chairs, Dr. Gonzalez for ELA, Diane Salvetti for science, and Meg Murray for math. So we're going to be kind of tag teaming this presentation together as a team. So tonight we're happy to present the data. I know you had a choice to either be here or watch the World Series, so.
There's still time.
Not yet.
So we'll move along here. Feel free to ask questions as we go along or at the end of each section or at the end, wherever the questions come on up. A quick overview. I'm going to provide a little bit of background on the Next Gen MCAS. This is a more rigorous assessment that the state put out called the Next Gen MCAS test, and this was only for grades 3 through 8 this year. The scores included achievement, growth, and we also look at overall accountability. But tonight we're only going to look at achievement and growth. Our accountability report card isn't going to be available until end of December, so we'll come back and be able to present that for you. The reason why the Department of Ed decided to outline a more rigorous, more comprehensive accountability system is to comply with the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, and to make us more competitive internationally. Some of the background with this: the state raised the bar to the passing level much higher, much more rigorous on this new assessment. In other words, it's more challenging. Like I said, it's more internationally competitive. This year, grades 3 through 8 took the computer-based test for the first time. The year before, only grades 4 and 8 took it, and the rest of the grades 3 and then 5 through 7 took a paper-based test. The 2017 Next Gen MCAS results served as a baseline for target setting for the 2018 accountability results. So in a sense, we're starting fresh from last year. In terms of growth scores, which is the second piece of information we're going to present, they do carry over from year to year, but the equation in the formula did change from 2017 to 2018, where up until 2017, the median was used to determine the growth score, and now the mean is used to calculate that. And I did add, as an example, an extra slide, which is in addition to what you have. Let me show you really quickly the difference between calculating the median and the mean. So if you take, for example, 11 students, and you have the student A through K scores are lined up. If you look at the median looks at the middle student. You can see that it's 5. For the mean, it takes the average. So you add everything up, divide by the number of students, you have 4.4. So median and mean, it can be the same, it can be different, it can be above or below. So although grades 3 through 8 took the Next Generation MCAS, high school ELA math, along with grades 5, 8, and the high school science, continued with what was called the legacy MCAS test. So therefore, when we look at the district as a whole for this year, it's going to be more of a 3 through 8 that we look at, because they had a similar exam with the Next Gen, and then high school was still taking the legacy exam. So this slide shows that although we still have 4 different achievement levels for the MCAS, they don't necessarily correlate. So we cannot compare the legacy scores in results with the Next Generation MCAS exam. So we are going to go through and review the grades 3 through 8 MCAS in math and ELA. We're going to go by subject and grade level, and then discuss the subgroup high needs, which was our previous focus area for our accountability data. Does anybody have any questions so far?
I have a quick question. For the legacy, the MCAS, now that they're not going to be the same, the advanced proficient needs improvement, and then the warning, what will become of the Abigail Adams Awards that were awarded to the students that scored in the higher levels all 4 years?
I haven't heard that they're going to change, that they're going to discontinue it.
Okay.
I don't know how they'll modify it to meet, but I don't know if
I haven't
Dr.
heard
Sullivan has heard
Just-
anything
I haven't
different.
heard them getting rid of it.
They
Yeah.
haven't set what the competency determination for the performance on the grade 10 legacy test will be. When they move from a raw score to a scaled score after they administered the test in 2019, they'll decide what the graduation score is, and I'm sure they'll bring up the scholarships attached at that time, but that line has not yet been set.
Thank you.
All right, in looking at math, we're going to start with looking at grades 3 through 8 on the next generation MCAS test. The bar graphs show the student achievement. The green is Abington, the blue is state. So when we take a look, I just realized there's a green dot on there.
I'm on it.
Thank you. I don't know how they got there. As a general rule of thumb, we want the green bars on the two left sides to be higher for exceeding expectations and meeting expectations, and we want the green bars on the right-hand side to be lower than the blue bars, so it's kind of opposite. So we take a look at grade 3 math. 56% of the students exceeded expectations as compared to 50% of the state, so we performed 6% above the state average. In grade 4, 43% of the students met or exceeded expectations, whereas 48% of the students in Massachusetts met expectations. So we are 5% below the state average in math. For grade 5, we performed 6% below the state average, but also notice, I don't know if you noticed in grade 4 and now in grade 5, the state generally sets their bar at 50%, but grades 4 and 5 did take a little bit of a dip statewide. In grade 6, we outperformed the state by 7%. And I'm going to turn it over to Meg.
In grade 7, the state outperformed us by 2%. But last year in grade 7, we performed 5% below the state, so we are making progress towards closing that gap. In grade 8, we performed 3% above the state. Last year, we performed 3% below the state, so we're making positive progress.
We didn't get a chance to have a rehearsal practice, so. Okay, this slide shows a compilation of the high needs results. So high needs, our high needs subgroup is composed of 3 different, actually subgroups. Students with disabilities, English language learners, and economically disadvantaged. The number of students in each category can change from year to year. So for example, some students that might have an IEP this year or might be having ELL services might not have that next year. And vice versa, we might get new students and the students might have different needs based on their individual learning. So this group is constantly fluctuating. So again, we want the 2 columns on the left to be higher and the 2 columns on the right to be lower. So as a district, we were 4% below the state average. Last year, we were on par with the state average. So overall, we're moving up. Just the comparison between year to year. Again, the state fluctuates as well. We are below the average, but making improvements. And later on in this presentation, we're going to discuss some growth scores and also some next action steps. This slide shows the second piece of data, which is our growth data. And this is 4 through 8 as a district and as individual grades. We don't have grade 3 growth data because the state doesn't have that. There's nothing to compare it to. There's no grade 2 MCAS. So if you take a look at the numbers in parentheses, the first number is the mean student growth percentile, which is SGP, and achievement is the second number, and that's what those were the scores we just presented with the bar graphs. Remember that moderate growth by the state is considered to be good with an SGP, or student growth percentile, between 40 and 60. 40 is considered below target and 60 is considered above. Shown on the graph, the state SGP was 50 and achievement score was 48% for math. As a district, we were slightly below we were slightly below the state for SGP by 2.7 and on level for achievement in math. For our high needs, their growth was 47.1, so they were also within the moderate growth and 0.2 points away from the aggregate. This means that our students were within the moderate growth and transitioning well to the new next-gen MCAS tests.
Doctor, can I ask you? Yeah, can I ask you
Yes.
one quick question?
Sure.
Regarding the high needs group, are any of the Are any of the subgroups ever looked at individually, or are they just always grouped together in total, the 3 groups together?
So we do look at each individual subgroup within high needs individually. Sometimes we don't get the data because it has to be within 20 students have to
Okay, yeah.
a subgroup.
Yep.
So for example, in some cases, we don't have English language learner subgroup, but we can pull students with disabilities or economically disadvantaged.
Okay.
But yes, when we work on our MCAS analysis with the teachers, we do break all that down.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question, just while we're near these slides, back to the results for the grade 7. This question is probably for Ms. Doherty. What was, you had said we were, although we were below the state average, we were making gains from last year. What was our overall gain, percentage-wise?
So last year, we were 5% below the state in terms of the difference. And what I really look at, because these tests are fairly new, is how we did compare to the state, not necessarily how we do year to year, because that baseline is going to change because it is so new. So last year, we were 5% below the state, and this year, we were 2% below the state.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions in math 3 through 8? All right, moving on to English Language Arts, or ELA. So similar graphs to math. In grade 3 ELA, we outperform the state by 10%. In grade 4, we outperformed the state by 2%. In grade 5, we were above the state average, outperformed by 7%. In grade 6, we did better than the state by 12%. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gonzalez.
Can I just ask a quick question before you switch to 7th grade?
Yes.
I know you can't compare because it's 2 different tests, but the state average in ELA in the past, how did we compare, like, related to the state? I've sat through some of the past, like, have the numbers been that significant above the state in grades 3, 4, 5, 6 compared to?
I have the data with me. I can pull it up now, or I can pull it up at the end.
I'm only asking because I'm thinking about the fact that we invested a lot of money in an adoption of new curriculum resources in those grades, and just your opinion.
Yeah.
Do you
It's big.
feel like that there was significant, did you happen to notice any significance between years past and this year, and do you think it has anything to do with updated curriculum?
So to give you an example,
Because they're impressive numbers in some grades. It's okay, you can get back to me. I didn't know.
it
Like,
didn't print out on these.
that's okay. I just thought when you see double digit above the state average, it's impressive. So I'm curious if we always live in that range, and I don't think we.
Not at the
No,
elementary
it's
level.
gone up
I was gonna say
significantly
base-
this year.
That's what
I believe last year, the year before, we were, like in grade 3, we were under in a few of the elementary grades. So there was, and actually I was going to talk about it later on in the commendations, is that it did significantly increase. And I think it's due to, we're changing our pedagogy practices or our instructional practices. We also have the tiered interventions that go along with it, and the newcomer and the ELL that accompany that as well. So we've seen, and I'll show you the high needs data is above the state as well. So I think from what I've seen, it's a significant improvement, and I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, and how validating to staff who has had to undergo all of the shifts.
They worked very hard.
To have them
Yes.
be rewarded with data that feels really good. So that's
They worked
exciting.
really
Yeah.
hard this past year. Yep.
Sherry, if I might. I would like to say also, before we adopted the new ELA curriculum materials, when we could see the park items on the horizon, that as a park fellow, I did go in and worked with teachers in grades 3 right up through 8 to go over item types, and we were looking at scaled student work from larger national administrations of tests. So there was a real effort on behalf of teachers to seek out that information and use it with their prior ELA materials, so they were ready to receive the new curriculum materials in a very proactive way.
So you must feel really good too. But
So for For grade 7, 49% of Abington students met or exceeded expectations, which is 3% above the state in ELA and reading. And in grade 8, 45% of Abington students met or exceeded expectations, 51% of Massachusetts students met or exceeded expectations. So we performed 6% below the state average in ELA and reading at grade 8.
As a district,
Sorry, just to piggyback a little bit on what Dr. Gonzalez said. So one of the changes was a question strategy where you would ask elementary students to finish a story. The story would end, and they'd have to draw their own conclusions based on the information and make predictions and then finish a story. And so in moving around the district, so not only did I sit in on one of Dr. Gonzalez's sessions about that, but then in moving around the district and seeing people teach, those are the types of questions that our teachers were asking our students in their assignments in preparation for this. So.
Well, I have a quick question.
Yes.
So is are the percentages compared to the state because of because we're trying to close the gap between state averages? Like are they not compared to it's not like a ranking system? Where like if there's like tiers like lower achieving schools or higher achieving schools, why is it why didn't they use the data compared to the mean of the state?
Yeah, sure. Just as the math piece. Because the test is so new and we transferred just last year was our first computer-based test, and the new grading policy in terms of the exceeding expectations, meeting expectations, so on and so forth, it's easier for us to compare how we did against the state because that state moves every year. So if we can kind of keep in mind where we are with the state, we know if we're making improvements, because we're closing that gap and hopefully exceeding that gap.
The other thing that we also do is we look at school districts that are very much like ours. So we would look at schools that are the same size, that have the same kind of socioeconomic demographic. So we might compare ourselves to Rockland, to East Bridgewater, to similar size schools, rather than to, for instance, Concord and Lexington. But we're all working for mastery. So especially with the legacy test that we've had, you'll see that almost all districts working on the same kind of test for over 20 years have prioritized certain things. So the state is a good barometer, but both of those are averages. We have students who score higher than that and students that score lower than that. It's a guessing question. Thank you for asking.
any other questions? So looking at the high needs for ELA, as a district, we outperformed the state by 2%. Last year, it was 4%. So we made large gains also in moving students out of the last category there, the not meeting expectations, and moving them into the other 3 categories for our high needs group. The state average for ELA was 50 for our student growth percentile and 51 for achievement. As a district, we were slightly above the state by 0.2 in SGP and 5% above in the achievement overall. High needs was 51.6, showing strong growth in ELA. All grades, including high needs, were within the moderate growth percentile. And this year, grades 5 and 6 had the highest growth percentile of the year. For action steps or recommendations, so this is what we look at when we meet with teachers as department heads, we meet with principals, and we start looking at data. We analyze the MCAS data during MCAS days and during common planning time, and we also look at the questions that the state provides, anything that's been released, not only this year, but the previous year. The reason is that we look for strengths and areas of weakness in both content and technology skills, and we develop our focus areas at that point. We look at giving practice questions to our students so that we can look for areas of pitfalls and we can navigate that as we move forward. So how do we use the data in our next steps? We analyze the data to isolate standards and anchor standards that we need to improve upon, creating an action plan and provide increased focus on our skills in tier-based math instruction, identify target groups of students relative to their scores, restructure lessons to more hands-on and student-centered applications, target individual students for remediation. Mr. Robbins and I are working together along with the principals and looking at a refined RTI program. We're currently working to strengthen co-teaching and inclusion models, particularly at the middle school. And we're looking to visit districts at the elementary level using math workshop model for more differentiated instruction.
In grades 7 and 8, middle school students will practice taking math exams online and become more proficient with the use of an equation editor and selected response questions. We'll incorporate departmental common planning time so teachers can analyze data, share resources, as well as strategies to help close the gap. In addition, we meet monthly at CPDC to work to align our curriculum vertically with our elementary counterparts.
And we thought, this is a little bit last minute as well, but we thought maybe just to show the difference between, there's the content and the skill, but then there's also the whole technology component that we've been working on with the students to be able to take this computer-based test, especially the younger grades, say grades 3 and 4, that sometimes they don't even know how to use a mouse or know what it is, to go from that to something like, for example, looking at fractions and being used to working with paper and pencil, going to dragging a ruler down from the toolbar and being able to take a look at being able to line that up, or even visually looking at the questions and, you know, saying, wow, how do we navigate this? So we still need to work on how to navigate the technology component. And I think Meg has
over here.
Yeah, you might have to.
So this is an example of grade 7, and it came out of the data team with Mr. McCurtain and the 7th and 8th grade teachers. So the question is very similar to what we've done before. Roll 2 number cubes and write the sample space, find out what the sum of 8 is, find the probability. But when you look at what it looks like online, you're dealing with so many more issues. So if you can just scroll down a bit. Sorry,
Oh, there we go. Okay.
So you can see what the equation editor looks like, but you'll notice it's really difficult to have the equation editor, the text box, and the question on the same screen. And what's really interesting about this is depending upon how you put your answer, you're either writing 36 pairs of numbers or you're writing 21 pairs of numbers, which means if you list them vertically, as most kids would do, except for when they did it in school, they did it at a table. They made 1 through 6, 1 through 6, and found all the combinations. There's no way to set that up easily. So when the next question asks you find out about the sum of 8, you have to go back to that box, scroll through, and you can never see that box once. You only see part of the box at a time. So it makes it much more difficult, particularly to track those numbers as you go along. So we thought it was important that you could see this, just A, to see what the equation editor looks like, B, to see what the text box looks like, and how the question is different than what it was in the past, even though the content is the same. Thank you for clicking that, yeah.
So for ELA, some recommendations and next steps that we have. At the elementary level, we're going to continue working with the Wonder assessments online. They very closely mimic the next generation MCAS questions with the multiple parts. We're also going to continue to use the practice questions that are released from last year and this past year. We're working very strongly with increasing independent reading stamina, and I think that we're seeing a big difference there, and it's transferring into other subjects as well. In December, we're sending 18 educators to go to the workshop model by Lucy Calkins, so 5 from early elementary, 5 from Woodsdale, and then all of grade 5, since they were not able to attend that first professional development session. Again, like math, we're providing a consistent co-teaching model. We're refining our RTI.
What's important at grades 7 and 8 is that students become more accustomed to reading a text online, to scrolling through it and using the digital tools to process that. When they read a wider variety of literary and nonfiction texts, they can also practice developing central ideas for those annotations. So they have highlighters that are available to them. They have a notepad that's available on the screen, and they're permitted one piece of scrap paper per testing session that has a writing unit in it. So they have to sort of rethink, I'm not using an actual highlighter, I'm not using a Post-it. The kinds of tools that we use when we annotate a digital print text are a little bit different. So when they get the facility with that kind of annotation, they can highlight those details that they are going to use when they write the composition. And they also have to practice generating evidence to support those ideas by using pre-writing and planning strategies more effectively. Now, the state has approved a graphic organizer for essay writing and narrative writing. But the kind of pre-writing tools that are going to help our students most are the kinds that they will use on that scrap paper, making a T-chart for comparison and contrast, being able to draw a timeline for a chronology, drawing a tic-tac-toe or call it a hashtag for these are the points that I'm making, these are the pieces of evidence I'm using, this is how I'm going to explain it. So when they learn to use those tools in this environment, their writing could be stronger. And I think the next slide is something that I can speak to as well. This is what an essay question looks like on the Next Gen MCAS. This is grade 3. They have a text on the left-hand side that they can scroll through, and in some items they have more than one text that they work at. But if you look at the right-hand side, you see a kind of simple word processor. One of the greatest challenges that all students face is they think that they write an index card length essay and they're done. But if you see the counter to the right that says 2,500, that's 2,500 characters. They need to think of their writing almost like you would think of a tweet or some other abbreviated social media writing platform where that's how many characters you have. So when they write in Microsoft Word, for instance, that document can go on and on and on. But what's happening, because they're less familiar with writing in this environment, they tend to write very briefly. And that's what I'm seeing in a lot of the writing scores. So once the students become more familiar with testing in a digital environment, or familiar with the test overall, I think the first time that we saw all our high school students pass MCAS was when we had the first students go from grade 3 to grade 10 in that testing scenario, with that type of program, with that type of answer key and rubric. So we're looking at these very early scores and hoping to see all our students meeting and exceeding expectations by the time our first third graders come to 10th grade.
Any questions on recommendations for grades 3 through 8, math or ELA?
I'm like freaking out right now.
Okay, the good part, accommodations. For math, teaching the students and then the students being receptive to learning how to take the Next Gen MCAS test online at the elementary level, really, it was fantastic. And it really, I think it took a team between the principals, the teacher leaders, and the teachers to all help pull together and make this happen. The test is more rigorous, and I think we met the challenge. We still have some tweaks to work on here and there. We're showing growth and holding the bar while we are implementing the brand new ELA Wonders program. In speaking with the state data analysts over the past few weeks, they really commended us for making this solid transition from the legacy to the next generation MCAS assessment, which we really see in the growth between the exams. And I really want to thank the teachers because they really, and the principals, they really stepped up to the plate in helping to make all of this work. And keep in mind too, our elementary teachers, they teach all the subjects. And some of them have 2 MCAS exams and some have 3. And their students need to take the math, the ELA, and in grade 5, science as well. On a side note, I just want to acknowledge that there was also a lot going on last year. So we had, again, the new ELA program at the elementary. Woodsdale got a new principal, and all the grades 3 through 6 teachers made a building move last year. So there was a lot of extra things going on, and to be able to keep the scores up and keep working hard shows a lot of dedication. So I just want to thank the teachers and the students for adapting and stepping up to the plate, making that transition. I know there were some tough times, but they really did a great job and continuing to work hard to make those improvements. And I also want to thank the administrators as well for orchestrating and making the move and the changes happen. And I know Felicia on the building committee and Peter as well and school committee, it was a lot of work. So celebrating successes and working through all those challenges as well. I think it really does take a team to move this forward.
And Sherry hit the nail right on the head. The teachers have done a phenomenal job with this, and the kids have really adapted to this. In grade 7, the students did very well on ratios and proportional relationships. And in grade 8, the students performed at or above the state on 4 out of 5 conceptual categories and in all question types. What I find so interesting is that ratios and proportional relationships, the grade 7 teachers decided to make that their student learning goal, and from the previous year after analyzing the MCAS data. And what was a weakness became a strength. And these teachers are really looking at the data and bringing it back to the classroom and implementing it. So that's really where these strides are coming from.
And then commendations for ELA. The hard work that the teachers put in at the elementary for selecting the new ELA program going over the past couple years from the pilot to the present. I am pleasantly surprised, Jackie, to your point, and believe that the scores are a reflection to the dedication, the time, and the effort they put into selecting this program. It did take a lot of time. It took a lot of work, and they really used the data to vet this out. They hit the ground running on it. There's new instructional strategies that go along with it. With our balanced literacy workshop and centers, we're doing the reading stamina. We're working together on the scope and sequence and seeing where we might be able to go a little bit faster and then take some time where we need that time with the kids. The principals and the reading specialists helping to roll this out and providing the training with that. And we're looking forward to continuing. I think we've got a lot of motivation with this moving forward. I would like to say that focusing on the new item types in professional development and in graphic organizers has resulted in better scores than Massachusetts average in conventions and idea development, particularly at grade 7. And when we look at the number of students in grade 7 and grade 8, from meeting expectations all the way up, that number is on par or better than the state. So these students are also made the transition to a new building, making a new transition to a new paper-based test, then a computer-based test, and they're doing well. Especially, I think, what middle school teachers find challenging is there is no consequence at grade 7 or 8 if a student does not meet expectations. It's not like in grade 10 where they're going to retest, that they have to pass it to graduate from middle school or move from one grade to the next. So it's a real challenge to keep grades 7 and 8 students focused on the task at hand and to do it for its own intrinsic value when it seems to be an interruption to them and their curriculum in their school life. So in particular, these results that are comparable with the state are very strong, particularly at the age group. There's still a lot of points on the table to be had. There's still a lot of more writing to do, but we do have a positive direction.
Good evening, and I'm going to talk about the science, technology, engineering standards, and these are the legacy MCAS tests. So as Dr. Fedora had said earlier, these tests are still recorded in the categories of advanced, proficient, needs improvement, and warning failing. So the STE MCAS exams are only administered in grades 5, 8, and at the high school level. We're still transitioning the new Massachusetts science standards.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, right? So sorry. So we're still in transition with the new standards, the 2016 standards. So the grade 5 and 8 science tests are based on multiple standards, including physical life, earth and space, and technology and engineering. And these exams were computer-based. The grade 5 MCAS is based on the K through 5 standards, and the grade 8 MCAS is based on the 6 through 8 standards. Next spring, these tests will be based on the new 2016 standards. At the high school, Science MCAS is a subject-specific test in which freshmen who are enrolled in biology will take the biology MCAS in the spring. So the results of the 2018 test is still based on the old standards. The 2019 test will overlap the new and old standards, and in 2020, the high school test will be based on the new 2016 standards. So results for grade 5. This graph shows that grade 5 performed 4% above the state average in the combined advanced and proficient categories. In grade 8, this graph shows that they performed 5% below the state average in the combined categories of advanced and proficient. Excuse me. And at the high school, this graph shows us that our high school students perform 3% higher than the state average in those combined categories. And when we look at our high needs group for all three of these grades, grade 5, 8, and high school, the data show that as a district, we outperform the state by 13%, again in the combined advanced proficient categories. At the elementary level, we outperformed the state by 7%. In the middle school, we were 3% below the state average, and our high school students outperformed the state by 9%.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
So the grade 8 science, is there, it's across, it's not Abington, it's the state. Is there a reason why the state is so far behind when it comes to grade 8?
Historically, our grade 8 scores and the state scores are low.
Mm-hmm.
And we hover a little bit below, a little bit above.
Yeah, it's not even a question about Abington in general. It's more a question of the state itself compared to every other one that we've seen. That one sticks out as being so much lower, the state itself.
Well, the variables are, it's a 6 through 8 test. So you've got to recall all that information.
Okay.
Basically in the 8th grade, they're teaching new curriculum while trying to go back to the 6 and 7 standards, and we give the test in May.
Okay.
If I could also just, as a former science teacher, offer a little bit of an opinion that I think we put English and math first, and then science, and we're not even testing social studies.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I feel like that.
Yeah. But I think in terms of work that's been done, reading in ELA has been the priority, and then math, and then science, and then social studies are kind of tagging along behind that nationally.
Thank you.
Just my
And
opinion.
we've also had the overlap of the standards, so we don't always know what they're going to teach for the past few years. We just, 2 years ago, Diane and I worked to get new curriculum for 6 through 8 that's better aligned to the new standards, so we're still adjusting to that. But in general, I think the grade 8 science statewide tends to be a little bit lower.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that wasn't a one-year outlier, so.
And again, they're learning a little bit of physical, a little bit of life, earth and space, technology. So again, there's an awful lot.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
There's something else that I can speak to as an English teacher. Our tests have readings, questions, writing. Readings, question, writing. But if you look at a released grade science test, for instance, you might have one question on plants, the next question on animals, the third question on cells, and they don't go together in clumps of, so not only you're trying to recall something from grade 6 and grade 7, it's randomly ordered, and it's that way for everyone. But I know that when I'm trying to recall something, for instance, in plant biology or life science, it would help if all those questions were clustered together or they were based on reading. And they're not all necessarily like that.
Okay.
And that's a challenge for someone. It really privileges memory, and that's something that we need to work on.
Okay. Thank you.
Now we're going to talk about the grade 10 math scores, which once again are the legacy tests. So this is the last year of the legacy tests. We move to the next standard. 88% of our students received an advanced or proficient, as compared to 78% of the state. Our high school students outperformed the state by 10%. And this is truly the visual we want to see, wherein you have the first two graphs, the green bars are bigger than the blue bars. And on the other two graphs, you want them smaller. So that's really the visual we've been working for. And 96% of our students passed the exam on the first time. In terms of our high needs students, 70% of our high needs students received an advanced or proficient, as compared to the school's 57%. I'm sorry, as compared to the state's 57%. The high school performed 13% better than the state, which is interesting. So our high needs students had 13% better than the peers in the states, whereas our aggregate had 10% better. So our high needs students actually outperformed their peers as compared. So it's kind of an interesting statistic. This is the student growth percentile. And when you look at it, they calculate the mean with the percent of advanced and proficient. So the mean for Abington was 60.4, and the state was 49.9. Our percentages at advanced and proficient were 89, and the state was at 78. And that puts us up and to the right, and that's where we want to be. So wherever the state is, we want to be up and to the right, as far up and far to the right as we can go.
So for ELA, we're also in the last year of our legacy test. And when we take a look at grade 10 in the aggregate, 92% of Abington students scored advanced or proficient, 91% of math students scored advanced or proficient, so we are 1% higher than the state average. For our high needs category, 80% of Abington students in high needs scored advanced or proficient, and it's a push with the state. The populations perform in a similar way. And when we take a look at our growth percentile, our mean SGP was 47.7, and it's just next to the state. I can't see that. I'm going to have to just look a little bit. Pardon? 93. 93. So 93% were advanced, were proficient or higher. So we are right on the state, and we have really been proud of our growth because we have moved from a high-achieving, low-growth school all the way across that top bar, so that we are right in between the high growth and the high achievement and right on top of the state results. Accommodations and recommendations. Start science.
So for the elementary science, this year for grades 3 through 5, we are starting with new textbooks that are aligned to the 2016 standards. We're also using our FOSS, which are full option science system kits, and these are inquiry-based activities, and the new textbooks also come with inquiry-based activities, so we're able to use both of them. We've got the new STEAM course that I think is making a big difference, and we're going to continue to do that and use the science in that course and also the math. We've already used some professional development days to ensure that everything is aligned to the new standards, our new curriculum, and we're going to continue to practice with the online assessments.
In the middle school and the high school, we will continue to use common planning time to build, review, rework the science curriculum so that the instruction materials are aligned to the new math frameworks. We will continue to incorporate MCAS questions, multiple choice questions, open response question types into the curriculum. This year at the high school, we are incorporating overlapping standards of the 2006 frameworks, 2016 frameworks, into the taught curriculum to prepare the students for the 2019 bio MCAS.
In terms of math, high school students will practice taking their exams online and become more proficient with the use of the equation editor, dynamic geometric software, and selected response questions. Students will also practice questions of increased rigor to transition to the next gen for 2019. Students will also practice and become more comfortable with doing math in an online environment. With the one-to-one computer initiative, students have more practice in doing this on a regular basis. It's now regular practice for students to do their homework and submit it online. This has become a huge teaching tool because before we would start class and say, do you have any questions with your homework? And now I come into class and I say, I know what questions you have with your homework, and that becomes our warm-up and our activator. In addition to that, students must become familiar with 3 equation editors, one for Canvas, one for Big Ideas, and one for MCAS. So they need all the practice they can get.
So what we are going to continue to do in English language arts is to concentrate on close reading across genre. In the MCAS 2.0, there are more in different genre of writing that students will be reading. We need to develop the digital annotation strategies. Students need to use evidence to develop strong thesis statements. And they need to develop arguments by synthesizing evidence from multiple passages. We are seeing in the legacy MCAS some multiple passage items. However, there are going to be more of them. So students can be more likely to see 2 or 3 texts at the same time and use those text-based questions to drive their answers. They'll look also more at authors' choices about diction, syntax, and organization. Rather than just the content and the ideas, it's how the author crafts the passage to integrate those knowledge and ideas that will really be the greatest sign of critical thinking.
End is in sight. I keep dropping things. Okay, commendations. So elementary performed above the state average on overlapping assessments as aggregate and high needs. We have the new dedicated science time built into the elementary schedule. We've got the STEAM classes to support the science, engineering, and technology. And Diane.
Yep. And as Shari had mentioned earlier, at the middle school, we do have the 6 through 8 science series that have been aligned to the new science frameworks. At the high school, our students met or outperformed the state in every category. And our high needs students, and our students in the high needs category at the high school outperformed the state by 9%.
And for math, the common planning time allows for teachers to collaborate on common assessments and share best teaching strategies, which has been pivotal to our growth. Our students performed even or above the state on all question types and in all 16 conceptual categories. And attention given to the education of our high needs students has led to the improvement of the scores for all of our students.
On the test, released items include literary passages for 10th graders from the novel All the Light We Cannot See, George Orwell's 1984, and The Jungle. Grade 10 Abington students continue to perform Massachusetts students in every item type on every standard. And a greater percentage of Abington students, 56%, scored in the advanced category than Massachusetts students, 51%. And something that we're really proud of is that Abington students in the high needs population demonstrated greater growth than Mass students in that category. So last year, I was here to thank the Abington community for its support of its students, for receiving the commendation from the state as being a school of excellence. And I told you perhaps at that point that we had an opportunity to apply for national blue ribbon status. And as was read into the record earlier, we'd like to congratulate everyone who shares in the award of the blue ribbon status. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
I have a question. Given the growth of the high needs category, which is fabulous, what percentage of our students are in high needs this year, as that ebbs and flows year to year, depending on what population is in that category, what was our percentage of high needs students last year versus, year to year?
So by specific subject?
No, overall, I
I can't give that to you overall because last year grades 3 through 8 took the next generation MCAS and high school took the legacy. I
think you're just looking for the total population size
Yeah, I'm not looking for
from
test
1 year
grades.
to 1 year,
Yep.
which might be something you have to look
You
up
can
from last year.
send it to
You probably, you
you
might
look
have
for
it
number of
tonight, but I'd be
students?
surprised.
Just a basic population, if
I
our,
can
I
tell
have it
you.
for the high school one.
And I have it for science, grade 8 and 10.
So the number of students in the high needs category, last year was 33, and this year was 40 for high school math.
We had 30 included for English language arts.
And in grade 10, we had 39 students, high needs students.
So roughly about a third of our students fall altogether into the high needs because our population hovers around 100 and change. So 30, rough math, about slightly less than a third.
and would you say that number, I'm such a apples to apples type thing, was that consistent? The growth is so great. Is that number of students represented that achieved that growth the same from the prior year? That's what I'm asking.
I think that's something that we might need to get back to you.
And that's fine.
For
Yep.
precise numbers, but it does fluctuate whether we have English language learners,
Yep,
different
all of
years,
that.
students with disabilities and different kinds of disabilities, and also our students in economically disadvantaged. Not everybody who's eligible for that status necessarily applies, although we do get more streams of data for students who are at risk in that area. So we can get back to you
Okay.
with that.
And just
And,
an overall, I don't need a specific, is
In
fine.
2015, the lowest we had was 28, and the next year it was 42. So it's been in that range, but I think what happened is a couple of years ago when our status wasn't as good, it really made us focus on those particular kids and how we could help them. And through the common planning time that was incorporated at that same time, it gave us an opportunity to talk to each other and find out what it is that we can do to help these kids. And in the process, helps everybody. We're teaching better, they're learning better, and it's showing the growth.
I think one thing we can say about the economically disadvantaged population is increasing. I've been speaking to MCAS results since the late 90s, and that population has increased. I think we're all aware of the turns that our economy has taken and how it affects people in our community. And there are more people who are coming to Abington who are at risk, and we're seeing that number grow up, and people are experiencing the tossing and turning of the economy, especially in southeastern Massachusetts.
Thank you.
So it's about the same, about 30%. I just phoned a couple friends in the audience, 30 to 40 around there per grade level, but it does fluctuate at the elementary level. But you need the exact data, we can get that for you.
I was just looking for an overall, like percentage, not even
Okay.
numbers per grade. That's true. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? So for the recommendations, who comes up with the recommendations for what you guys should? Is it you or?
It's a team effort, so
Okay.
that involves us collectively. We've got the curriculum planning development council, and that is comprised of, we meet monthly, teacher leaders, teachers, department heads, directors. Directors aren't involved as much as the MCAS principals. We have, we meet at common planning time to go over data and look at the results and talk about action plans. We will have subs come in when we look at the data and all sit together and work. Department heads come in and work with the 7 and 8. So it's really a big team effort, and everybody has a voice in that and what we can do and bring that together.
It's also then connected to the budget process, which I can't believe we're starting it again for the coming year, but you'll see, based on information gleaned out of the MCAS data, it'll help us with some of our budget priorities.
I would also say that the common planning time is so crucial. As soon as the scores are available to us in a preliminary way, long before we can discuss them publicly, teachers are using that data to set their personal evaluation goals, and every teacher sets a student growth goal, and a professional practice goal. And in the prior evaluation model, you would do your dog and pony show, your best lesson for the principal to come in and see what it is that you do. But now with this evaluation model, people are coming in more frequently to your classroom, and you're reflecting halfway through your evaluation cycle and at the end about that goal that is designed to drive student growth. So the goals are not just coming down from the central administration office or from principals. Teachers are really looking at the data and setting those goals. So we're bringing forth really what teachers are using in their evaluation model to drive student success. So it really is, I'd like to underscore what Shane had said, it really is a team effort, and very organic, and very coming from direct observation of what students are strong at and what students struggle with.
And it fluctuates from year to year based on the results.
Another thing that you guys mentioned in the middle, in the beginning, was the response to intervention for the elementary school, that you guys were going to look at a new way. I think it was 3 through 6.
Yes.
So they seem to have always had an issue, kind of. Maybe it's just coming from my perspective of looking at it. So what are you going to do that's different?
So,
Because there seems to have always been some problems with that.
so we're looking, James and I are actually teaming with the principals to refine the process and kind of dig deep to see what's going on in the classrooms and in the buildings. And we want to look at a refined approach and look at some other possibilities, such as triangulation of data monitoring, some of the screening process, bringing some tools in to take a look at that. And also the professional development and education for the teachers related to RTI.
Is that something that you'll probably come back and present to us when
Right.
you have figured out more specifically what?
We figured that was coming.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you want to add anything, James?
Well, sure, you basically touched on the main themes, but yeah, we'll definitely explore screeners that we find most compelling to give us helpful information, so that we know exactly where a student is at any given time and how they rank to their class. We'll find just some evidence-based interventions that we find effective, but also easy to implement in your typical elementary class. And we'll just kind of definitely go through some data analysis PD, just because for some folks that's a big part of RTI, but for a lot of folks it feels foreign. And so we want them to feel empowered by the process. So I'd say the data analysis, universal screeners, and evidence-based interventions will be like kind of our 3 inroads in terms of working with staff.
So how long will it take you to implement that, and then the results? Like, are you giving it a year? Are you giving it 6 months? How much time are you giving that before you move on to something else?
Yeah, so RTI is like the core of the multi-tiered system of support, which is what DESE really wants all school districts to adopt. So I would say we just need to really latch onto it until it's fully implemented. So we'll kind of let the data guide us. I would say we want to meet staff where they're at. So probably pilot in a few classrooms, and then like grade levels kind of come around. So I would see it kind of as a multi-year process.
Okay.
But the important thing is that it's actually implemented with fidelity. So however long it takes us.
It's going to be, I think, similar to what we did with the ELA rollout as well. Getting staff input, probably putting a committee together and making sure we have the buy-in and looking at what we need to do as a team.
Thanks. I have a question for you. It was towards the end, and it went kind of over my head. It was just really quick. You mentioned 3 ways that you were going to, where was it? You mentioned 3 ways that you were going to, I think, try to do math with.
Oh, the equation editor?
Yeah, okay.
So
can you touch upon that a little
sure.
bit?
So the
Thanks.
equation editor is basically when the kids do math online, there's no easy way to plug it in.
Right.
So they have equation editors. So they have equation editors for what they call relationships. So all your greater than, less than, equals, all of those. Then they have them for your regular math, which is your multiplication, division, how to write a fraction online. And then they also have them for geometry. So an angle symbol is different than a less than symbol. So you have to use the right ones. So we have 3 different online environments that we use right now. The first is Big Ideas, I think grade 7 and 8, as well as in grade 10. And that is the series that we have. And that comes with the online equation editor. So when they submit their homework, they're submitting the homework the same way they did with MCAS. But that's a little bit different than the one that they can use in Canvas. They have a different one in Canvas, which is if I want to create a quiz, in Canvas and send it to them, then they have to know how to use that equation editor, which is different than the one that MCAS is going to use. So they're all similar, but they have to be comfortable with how each one functions.
So how much time is going to be spent learning those to be able to do it with MCAS?
It's funny that you should mention that. We talked about our goals, and one of my goals is to make a module around, in Canvas, around how to use the three equation editors. So that students can, I can push it out to teachers, teachers can push it out to students. But the key is that they have a computer in their hand right now that is so different than before. We wouldn't assign the homework from the book because we didn't know what kids had at home. But now they're all using the computer that they have through the district, which is wonderful. So every night our kids are doing their homework in their notebook and then submitting their answers online so that I can A, see it, but B, every time they do that, they have to type it in correctly. So things that I've learned, kid puts in a fraction, it's supposed to be x divided by the quantity 2 plus y. They put in x divided by 2 plus y. The equation editor reads it different and marks it wrong. So those are great learning tools that we just pull right up on the screen. We pull it up and say, hey, what's wrong with this? Why is the book marking it wrong? Mm-hmm. The nice part is we also had Desi come in to Abington last spring to talk to the high school about the next gen MCAS. Talk to all the Southeastern Massachusetts mathematics chairpersons. And one of the things they did tell us, and I felt much more comfortable with, is that when they receive a lot of incorrect but the same answers, it goes through a process where it gets acknowledged and they look at it to see if the kids have typed it incorrectly. So that made me feel better. And things like, there was a question of x squared equals 169. The kids know there's supposed to be 2 answers, but they only put in 1. Because it was only place for one. Right. So they were more mad about it than kids because they're like, there's supposed to be 2 answers, I'm doing something wrong. So there's been a lot of communication about that, but their test development has been pretty impressive so far.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, department heads.
Thank you all very
Thank you.
much.
Appreciate it.
When it's possible, could I just make a quick comment?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So, thank you very much for a very thoughtful presentation. It's there's so much information that's available to people. This presentation could go on until the World Series gets resolved over the next series of days. So you never know how much and where to stop, and so the effort is to put an overview together by grade, by subject area, and then people can go as deeply as they want to go into each subgroup or subject area. So I appreciate the work that you did on it, and I know the work's not over. The work is just beginning with this data, and also overall, there's always areas of concern. If we're going to continue to do our job, we are focusing on those areas of concern, and they change from year to year. And so I think what you saw was an effort to address those areas of concern, but overall, you saw positive information on how Abington has performed on this test. And I appreciate that you also got to see some examples. And so we're very proud of the work that's been done by everybody in the school system. And so thank you for taking the time and to listen and help us digest some of it. So.
Thank you. Up next, Mr. James Robbins, Reporter, Director of Student Services.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is just a really quick update of 2 pilots that we're doing that have started in the month of October. And this is all just to keep you up to date and also to answer any questions you may have about them. So first with a quick caveat that with any pilot, what we do is we implement it and then we just carefully monitor the data and just engage in continual reflection to ask, does this work for our community? So the 2 things I'll talk about tonight we're doing because we think this will best serve our students, but we'll see as we go through it whether or not it in fact is serving our students how we'd like to. So first, we're going to expand co-teaching in the Abington Middle School. So one of my very first conversations I had in the district is with the administrators at the middle school, with Erica and Matt, and I said, okay, so what is your goal for special ed in your building? Where do you really want to bring us over the next year, and how can I be of help? And the first thing, and what they both said basically in unison is like, okay, we'd really like to roll out co-teaching at our grades 5 and 6 level. And then shortly thereafter, I had the opportunity to meet with the CPAC and just gauge their feedback as to how we could best support students. And they said a similar thing, that they'd like greater access to co-teaching for their students. And then also I was at one of these school committee meetings, and Jackie Abrams had brought up that, speaking on behalf of herself as well as many parents that she's spoken to, that she too would like to see co-teaching in our school. So it was like a nice moment of, there was consensus already in our community. So I'm going to explain to you how we're rolling it out, and we'll see whether, and so we'll gauge to how effective it is. So what we're going to be doing is we've already begun the pilot in ELA and math. And for those who aren't familiar with what exactly co-teaching is,
Okay.
So the idea of it is
I
that
do,
it's,
but others don't.
yeah, so it's a general education teacher and a special education teacher together teaching a general content area. And why this is considered effective is that if you have a special education teacher actually in the environment, they can design the environment to be more responsive to all types of learners. But also you can have your special education students learning among their peers, and there tends to be a positive effect of them learning among their peers. And also you just don't have to take students out of the classroom to teach them. And I think the reason why there was so much consensus on getting co-teaching at this level is that right as students are beginning to feel really self-conscious, which in those early adolescent years is when we were start taking them out of the classroom. So the idea of keeping more students in the class to learn ELA and math, but also work on their IEP, ELA and math goals is the idea of co-teaching. So we've got a pilot co-taught 5th grade ELA class going right now, and a pilot 5th grade co-taught math class. So that's begun. And so that right now the two teachers are working together and kind of working out the kinks. So in order to promote the kind of efficacy of this project, we've contracted with coaches to kind of come in to meet with our staff to make sure that, to help them troubleshoot any problems that are coming up. And so we got two pretty big names to come in. We have Dr. Kristen Rodriguez, who was a former superintendent of Groton Dunstable, many years a curriculum leader, and also contracts with DESE to give professional development on universal design for learning. And Lori Kastner, who's a current superintendent of the Central Berkshires School District. And so they're just both experts on co-teaching. And so they'll work with our staff on November 5th, 30th, 17th, January 28th, and March 1st in order to give them guided feedback on what they're doing, but also to provide some direct instruction on the best practices of co-teaching. So we'll see how that goes. And the idea is that we're also bringing staff in at the 6th grade level so that next year this can roll out to, so there'll be 5th and 6th, so that whole late elementary crowd will have co-teaching opportunities.
Can I ask you a question? Are you
Sure.
going to do this in all of the classrooms, or a few, or
So right now it's
like when it rolls out?
Yeah, we're just starting with one ELA class, one math class. Going on to next year, we'll have that at 5th and 6th grade level. Right now, it's at 5th grade.
Right. So what about the following year? Like, will it be in every classroom for math and ELA?
Nope, that won't be the case, just because we don't have the staffing or the number of students who need that.
Okay.
So at about each grade level is about roughly 20 to 30 students with disabilities, and only a certain portion of them will be able to participate in co-teaching instructions. There's a sizable portion who still need what would be called pull-out instruction. So you won't see this in all classes. It'll just be 1 to 2 to 3 classes per content area.
James, really quick.
Pilot you're currently running, and you're running in one math and one ELA in the 5th grade. Is it the same class or two different teachers?
Same teachers.
How did you choose the teacher to do the pilot, or teachers?
So at that level, you have one special ed teacher per grade level. You also have other special ed teachers who are hitting that grade, but they're focused on a more specialized population, be it behavioral or more severe needs. So we kind of had our choice of one special ed
What
teacher.
about for
Well,
classroom teachers?
yeah, that's what I was.
That's what I was thinking. Like,
And-
how do you have a lot to choose from, so did you do interest-based or?
Yeah, we chose the general ed teacher, I think just based on our expectation that they would make an effective team. As someone who seemed open to trying a new model.
Can I ask a question? So will the teacher change, will that change every year, the co-taught classroom, the teachers that are in it? Will one teacher do it one year and then the following year another teacher?
Well, so at this moment, I think it's best to only think like maybe 2 years ahead. But the idea is that right now we're training a special ed teacher and general ed teacher at 5th grade. They're piloting it right now. And we're training through Dr. Rodriguez and Corey Cessna, 5th and 6th grade. And this will be a gen ed teacher and a special ed teacher. So right now we'll just be working on those folks who've been trained.
Okay.
And then we'll have in-house some in-house expertise on co-teaching, and perhaps we can expand it to other staff members. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
So does the teacher have any input as to whether she or he wants to do it? And
Yep.
do they also have any input on who their special ed teacher would be, or does that get picked for them?
Yeah, they definitely have input. Matt McCurtain actually had met with them beforehand in order to just sort of get buy-in and make sure that we weren't forcing someone to do something they didn't want to do. So that was kind of squared away.
How many teachers do you expect to train this, the 5th and 6th with this training we've set up, or you've set up?
So there'll be 5th grade special ed teacher, 6th grade special ed teacher, 5th grade gen ed, 6th grade gen ed, and then we're also inviting some 7th and 8th grade special ed teachers too. So like with the idea of maybe rolling it out or strengthening at that level.
So by the end of our, you say spring, we'd have 3 teachers and 3 special ed teachers trained? Is that what you're thinking? Because we have 1 now you're piloting, and we're
Yep.
training 2 more, essentially. So 3 teams.
Yep. And I'd also say that there's a chance there's some folks who may jump in on this training because it's like, hey, free best
I
practices.
was just gonna ask that, if when these experts come in, will the other teachers not involved in the pilot have any opportunities to jump into some of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we just
Information.
feel like, I think it depends on availability, but I think the idea is that like, oh yeah, we've got this really special thing so that when people are involved, they can dive in. But it's also like, Sherry's gonna be there, I'm gonna be there, Matt and Erica are gonna be there. So the idea is that like, we're training folks who are actually doing the co-teaching, but we're also training potential trainers among us so that in subsequent years, we're able to, should we get someone right out of grad school and we want them to do co-teaching, we should have this body of knowledge so that we can share it with staff.
So we're going to set up a train-the-trainer program, basically.
Yep, that's embedded in this, while also directly training the teachers, because that's the important part of this, is that some teachers took some risks because they trust Matt and they believe in this project, but we want to make sure that they actually feel empowered in what they're doing, but also are exposed to best practices. This is a part of a lot of people's graduate school training, but some of the training can be pretty abstract. So the value of having trainers come in is that they can actually give concrete feedback about how to partner and how to be effective as co-teachers.
Can I ask another question? Would you still have a para in the classroom, or would that eliminate a para? Or
So it's in the realm of possibility that there could be a para in there because, for example, say a student who's participating in there has a one-to-one support or something like that. So that could always happen. But the big idea is that you're replacing a para with a special ed teacher, and just because the obvious point is that the special ed teacher is more credentialed and has greater experience, so that they're going to be able to best serve all the students in the environment.
James, can I hit on one thing before you switch it?
Yeah.
You mentioned the observations, and I know like a lot of the things you heard that our elementary level does a pretty good job with this co-taught program, and I know 5th and 6th isn't the same as 1st and 2nd. I get that, but the idea of the co-teaching is still co-teaching. Will there be a chance for them to see it done in other schools within our district that are easy to get them to go see things?
Yeah, so that's a really great suggestion. I've already heard from, as these conversations have kind of just gone on among the administrative level, It's come to light that there are a few exemplars within our district, and so I think it makes sense that our staff, say at the middle school, would go and see some other classes. And yeah, so we'll see kind of what the teachers need. Like, so the thing is, we can do no better by the teachers than bringing in these experts on this. So they're getting the cream of the crop, and not only are they getting high quality instruction, they're essentially getting hand over hand support. That's the idea of bringing someone in 5 times for several hours. So they're getting that, but I think it also makes sense to just idea share and see what other classrooms do.
Can I ask you another question? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What about, so when you say co-teaching, I think that they're going to share responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Is one teacher, going to teach every day a certain subject, or are they going to switch off?
Well, so the idea is, to make it concrete, imagine you've got this ELA class, right? Typically that would be taught by an English just the English teacher. Maybe there would be a para in the room, and then you'd have some special ed kids in there. But at times they'd have to be brought out in order to learn how to organize their writing, say for their IEP goal. The idea is that we're going to take the special ed teacher and put he or she in the ELA class, so that they can team teach with that English teacher, so that the special ed kids aren't missing any general ed high quality content time. They're getting, so that there's modeling going on with their peers. And so in the process of kind of team teaching, there are times where the special ed teacher will actually be leading whole group, where the general ed teacher will be side by side with the student with disability. Other times it might look more traditional, where you have the gen ed teacher in the front of the room and then the special ed teacher up with kind of a small group. But the idea is that you're keeping kids with disabilities in the classroom so that they're getting the benefit of that modeling, they're getting the benefit of the high quality instruction that comes with being with that gen ed teacher. And it gets better with time, just because the special ed teacher will become more accustomed to working with the gen ed content as the year goes on.
Thanks.
Yeah. We got one.
All special ed children, or how are you going to decipher who goes into it when they get to 10th grade?
So the way we determine it now is whose goals can be met in this setting. Because that's the big thing, is that there are some students whose needs are so great that they need more individual kind of small group attention with a special ed teacher. And so being in the classroom just isn't workable. But there are also a number of students who they could actually make academic progress in these general ed classes. So that's what those students would determine as the ones who should pilot with the co-top.
And we do have these classes in this daily and Beaverbrook?
Yep, we have more.
And how long has this been going on for in other districts or states or however?
Oh yeah, so co-teaching, so that's a good question. Co-teaching is something that has been going on and recommended for years, 10, kind of 15 years. But it's not like, but I don't mean to suggest that if you were to go to surrounding districts that they would have it. It's been something that's been recommended, but a lot of districts find it really difficult to implement, especially small districts like us where we don't have many staff members or our cohorts are really small. So it takes time to roll out. So I wouldn't say that we're really behind. There are some districts who have been exemplars in co-teaching for years, but I would say, at least looking in the region, I was in East Bridgewater last year, for example. They're very similar to where we're at.
So I'm not trying to bring this down or anything, but like, how long are we going to give this? Like, is it, do you have a couple of years? Like,
So
I don't
the idea is
that's a
that
stupid question, but
So no, I think it's a good question, because the idea is that we're to be really direct about it. We're putting a ton of resources into making this work, right? Like it's pretty rare to bring in coaches to kind of do hand over hand support with your staff. I mean, what tends to happen is you send folks out to go to a one-day PD and they come back and they share ideas. But we're like, no, we really believe in this and we want this to happen now. And so what I would say is that we expect this to really work this year and be off the ground next year. Yeah. All right, so just one other pilot that we've kind of rolled out this month that I want to talk about is Gosnell counseling. So the idea here is that we've contracted with the Gosnell agency to come to our district to spend one day at our middle school and one day at our high school to provide clinical level therapeutic counseling. Our reason for doing that is that I'm someone who's worked as a school psychologist, and I've worked at the secondary high school level. And oftentimes you see kids who have pretty severe emotional needs. And those needs are greater than can be remediated in typical school-based services with school-based professionals. The licensure is different than what you get in outside counseling. The level of preparation that our school-based staff is different than, a clinical therapist. But in addition to that, a lot of parents truly struggle to actually make that connection with an outside counselor. Parents often struggle to navigate the insurance requirements or identify someone who really works with their student. And so at least my experience at the secondary level is there were, each year in multiple cases, we'd recommend that a student needs some outside therapeutic counseling, and a parent it would just never come to pass. And it's not because the parents didn't try, it's just that they didn't feel like they knew who to turn to. So this allows us to control the process and make sure that we have someone in-house that we can connect these students to. So the counselor we've got on staff is a LMHC, which is a licensed mental health counselor. So this is the license you get in most cases for outside counseling. And so our school staff make a referral to the counselor, and the counselor sort of takes it from there in terms of making the linkage with the family. The value of this is that with parent permission, the counselor can also connect with school staff and work with the student on things that are coming up in the school and consult with teachers. One other component of this is this is essentially outside counseling during the school day for those kids with pretty severe challenges. And because it's the level of like outside therapeutic counseling, the Gosnell agency does bill the parent's insurance. But in the event that we make a referral and the insurance just doesn't work with Gosnell, then Gosnell will eat the cost. And we out of a grant, pay a small fee to kind of offset that for them. So the idea is that before a student really deteriorates due to emotional difficulties, this is just one additional support that we can connect them to.
I have some questions.
Absolutely.
This is already happening, you said?
Yep, that started 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Last week.
Last week. I think I'm pretty good about reading all the emails you sent. Have we sent info to parents about this?
So before they engage, those conversations take place with the counselors.
But I mean, in general.
Specific.
No, not specific.
So they're specifically referred to these people. So it wouldn't be a general counselor to meet with the general population.
No, I know that. Have we mentioned to our parent population at the middle school and high school that we're now offering this service, that we've contracted with an agency that?
No.
Okay.
But it's not a general it's not a general way to address a general population. It's those specific kiddos who are really demonstrating these behaviors. So it's not like everyone's going to be seeing these counselors.
I understand that. What I'm trying to say is I think it's a great thing we're doing, and I think it's something that the parent population should know, that we're trying to support our children across the board, not only academically but emotionally. I mean, it's before you as you said, really some difficult things. Everyday life for a high school student is difficult. So to have that in-house for parents, I think it's a great thing. I think parents would be happy about it.
Yeah,
Right.
I see, and I think the point, you don't want to make sure that not everybody thinks they can just have their kid go there. It's not an open thing.
Right, but they're not going to make an appointment. I think I'm just saying it's a really great, I think we miss the mark a lot on letting the public know all of the supports we have for our students.
So, and this was a way, absent hiring a person in the budget process and not having the means to do that, to get to that really critical need in a creative way that also provides us some flexibility dependent on available resources down the road.
Yeah, and I guess one thought to hit on too is that, so this LMHC is in our high school on Monday, our middle school on Thursday. And so one day each, so it's essentially 6 students in each building, and the idea is that's kind of the most severe needs. So it's the number of, and the idea is that this is also a pilot year. So we're just trying it to see if it actually, we find it effective.
Yeah.
So it'll hit just sort of a small bit of the population, but like, because it's a pilot, should we find it very effective, this is something we can expand on, and the cost of it is very small to our district.
That's good.
Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
I'm really sorry. So it's 6 students basically that are using this right now, and it's in school that it's happening?
Well,
And
so
how
up to 6 students per building. So
Okay.
it could be up to a total of 12. A reminder, it's at the high school and middle school.
Yep.
And then what was your question?
What was my question?
How long?
Thanks. How long do they, like, is it like an hour? Do they go at lunch? Like, how does that work?
So the requirement of the agency is that we provide them with at least 39-minute counseling blocks, but because we have 49-minute periods, that'll be the length. Because it'd be kind of odd for a student to just come back for the last 7 minutes of class or something.
Right. So, when do they leave? Are they leaving and going to this during math or lunch or?
Yeah, so that's worked out among the counselor. They touch base with kind of staff in the building and with the parents.
Okay.
Because ideally, if we were to recommend outside counseling or therapeutic counseling, a parent would do it after school hours.
Right.
But we find that doesn't work in many cases. So we're like, okay, let's make it during the school day. And so always the mentality is, okay, what is the least obstructive class that we could take them from? Math and ELA are, usually the ones you want to try to avoid.
Right.
So it's always on a case-by-case basis, but the idea is to try to keep it unobtrusive, but also not missing the same class over and over again.
Oh, that's good. I'm so sorry. I have one more question, and it's only because this is very new to me. I think it's great. But what does it really mean by therapeutic counseling?
Right.
What happens?
Yeah. So most counseling that takes place in school would be called school adjustment counseling. So how can I support a student in being comfortable in him or herself to be able to just sit in class, deal with kind of peer pressure and things like that. But the big idea is really to support them in just kind of getting through the day, right? The idea of therapeutic counseling is empowering students with significant, considerable strategies to deal with significant mental health challenges. So one really common strategy that's introduced through therapeutic counseling is called cognitive behavioral therapy. And so that exposes students to a bunch of behaviors that they can do to manage their maladaptive emotion, be it anxiety, be it depression, be it anger. And also a bunch of different cognitions in order to challenge the maladaptive thoughts. So it's really at a much deeper level. Rather than how can I deal with my neighbor in my health class who I think is making fun of me, and I can't pay attention because I'm just kind of obsessed with this relationship. That's what one person may go to school-based counseling for. A person who would go to therapeutic counseling would ask, why is it when I'm in a public setting, I become overwhelmed with anxiety and I'm not able to organize my thoughts? So it's at a much grander, broader level, as opposed to just specific incidents. It's much more holistic. Now, it's a gray area, right? Because best practices in school-based counseling would be like, okay, how can we get to these big strategies? But there's a difference in licensure and preparation. The folks who are working in schools just happen to have less experience than an LMHC, who can just offer kind of higher quality therapeutic counseling.
Just a quick comment for you. I love that you're here each month presenting these things, but also the social emotional learning. So something that I think would be nice in the future, and I'll make this quick, but the guiding principles from the state in the content areas like ELA, math, science. Like ELA I know well, so there's 11 guiding principles. And I think it's like number 8, 9, or 10 is specific to social emotional learning. So actually when we look at a guiding principle is the sort of uniform, not an expectation, but like a universal piece that's happening across the state in terms of literacy. So to think that in order for students to access any content area, they have to be socially and emotionally safe and comfortable in their classroom. And it just dawned on me the other day that's the tippity top of where the state starts, then all of this hour and 20 minutes on data that shows how our students perform in those content areas. I hope that there's a day in the future where we spend an hour on really getting into the nitty-gritty of what we do and how we address social emotional. And you're starting that work in such a short amount of time of being here, so I commend you for that. But I think that it's going to be great to look back at ways we've celebrated, things we do in Abington, like taking on this initiative with the counseling, but then maybe some recommendations too on things we can do for kids, different than maybe it even connects back to how we began the meeting with some of Shannon's comments. Just I noticed on your slide before, I circled 3 things that I just think jump out at me: thoughtful classroom design and management, a shared vision and set goals. I'm imagining you mean between students and teacher and staff and that work with students, and mindset and cultivating relationships. I think that the fact that the observations and all of these troubleshooting topics that you're going to work on, it's screaming social emotional focus area, and I think it can't be more timely with the fact that we are getting emails constantly. Peter's probably tired of writing them, related to problems we're having, situations we're having in Abington. And it's not special to Abington. We're all struggling around the state, and I think that this is a great way. Some of these ideas are great that you have for trying to be proactive as best we can.
So one of the things that's occurred in Abington is good people have been working to take care of our students for years and years and years. And the work around the social emotional piece has been different fragments and splinters in different areas. And one of the things that we've talked about at Central Office, and James has been great with, and so has Sherry, and we're talking about more as an administrative team, is stepping back and looking at all of it in the landscape and where we need to focus some of these efforts and be strategic about it. And this is an example of an identified area, and just as you had mentioned, Jackie, I think what you're talking about is those emails that I have to write about someone who feels as though they're picked on, they get angry, and then they may say something they shouldn't say. And I am tired of writing those because I feel badly for the individual, I feel badly for the stress that it causes everyone, and I also, we've got students that may have been teasing that need to learn a lesson too about how we're going to treat each other. And so this is something that we didn't need to wait on. When you find something that you can implement right away when you're looking at those things, and so why wait? If it's something that's going to be good for kids, we want to do it as soon as possible. There are other things that are good for kids that are going to take more time, and again, we want to be strategic about and thoughtful about. You heard a lot about the co-teaching model, and that you don't just call an outside agency and work through them to put them in place. Put that in place tomorrow. That takes more time to do it right, because we want to do all of these things the right way. So those are just my comments on what.
And thank you for those thoughts.
I have a couple more questions. If you, how did we choose them, the Gosnell agency?
I'm not aware of any competitor who provides this service. I have come across in my experience, as I'm sure some others have, of your random counselor who is able to come in during the school day to provide some counseling, be it because of parent schedules or it works that way. But as far as an agency that will staff someone and make sure that staff members kind of get supervision and is aware of best practices in schools, and has the reputation that Gosnell has, that this seems to me this was the only game in town that I knew about. And just to give you some kind of some references, I know Middleborough Public Schools have rolled this out this year. Cohasset has Wareham Public Schools. So it had crossed my attention last year that a number of school districts had actually started to use this and found it effective.
And use this agency themselves?
Yep. So, some folks may have heard of the Gosnovel Agency, and some they serve to a great extent folks who are struggling with substance use. But in the case of their work with schools, they target the range of challenges that could come up from internalizing issues like anxiety and depression to externalizing like anger and risk-taking behavior.
So as James has mentioned, we've been outsourcing this outside of the school day with different agencies for years. This is outsourcing it within the school day because it hasn't been happening effectively when we outsource it out of the district outside the school day in the past, if that helps.
And could you give us an example of when you talk about what some school-based supports might be that they could offer? In your second bullet, it says in addition to counseling.
Oh, yeah. School-based supports would be, so one thought would be that if a school had like direct social emotional instruction that was happening during the day, which I know Kate Casey has done a ton of work at the secondary level. So a lot of our secondary students are getting this through their health classes. So that's one school-based support, right? They're getting direct instruction on emotional awareness, emotional management, learning the rules of socializing. So one support there. There's also the work that they get with the guidance counselors, which is kind of like event-driven. That something will come up and they'll process it with a guidance counselor. For more severe needs, our school psychologists can work directly with students. And when it comes to just things in the social, like in the social realm, our speech language therapists do some social pragmatic work there. So that's the work that we do. And we'll continue to see if we can do better and things like that. But this will be added to that because this will be a deeper dive into therapeutic counseling.
We had Jessica Minahan here just a couple weeks ago. And one of the examples she gave that I thought was really good about this was that she was working with students that didn't like writing, and then she broke down for the students the exercise of writing, whether it was writing the words or the spelling that was involved or putting the words together. And then what happened was she identified for the student that it wasn't all of writing that they didn't like, it was the spelling portion. So developed internally in those students that didn't like writing the means by which to overcome the anxiety about writing, because they were able to focus on that one piece and they decided, oh, it's not writing I don't like, it's just the spelling piece I don't like. And then, so it helps, it's a strategy, it's the development of strategies to cope with those anxieties. To give you an example that I think that was great that Jessica used a couple weeks ago. And hopefully James agrees with me because.
Well, just to clarify, so counseling from like an LMHC, that's primarily for people who like have trouble like functioning like daily like school.
Yep, it can take a bunch of different forms. Because we have this person just 1 day a week per school, we would want to make sure it's for the kids who are having kind of the greatest number of challenges, but what that challenge is could be different depending on the kid. Just to give an example, for some students may be using kind of illegal drugs during the day, and they're probably doing that because they have some deep-seated emotional issue, but they're doing it with such high frequency that they're struggling to get to school, and when they're there, they're under the influence, and they're not getting their work done, and it's causing issues at home too. So that'd be like the type of student whose life is really on a kind of downfall that we would want to connect to a counselor like this. So something else that could come up is that you hear often with high school age students that they'll engage in self-harm and cutting when they're feeling when they have greater emotional challenges. And so someone who's doing this, that's a very high risk behavior. So if we learn of this is the type of student we would want to refer to this. There are also some students who really struggle with what's called school avoidance, and that's usually comes because they're very anxious with some aspect of their school day. And so just getting to school for them is a challenge, and they'll miss many days of school and may struggle to walk in the door whatsoever. A student like that is the type of student we would want to connect to a counselor like this. So it can look many different ways, but we just know we want it to be the most challenging thing, since we'll only be with this person 1 day a week per building.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.
I think there's a question in the audience.
Oh.
If the pilot is successful, is there any chance that the services will trickle down to the other buildings?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, so I've been very deliberate about making sure to say it's a pilot, because because the thought is that they do have counselors available at the elementary levels, but we're like, okay, we know the greatest amount of risk-taking behavior is at the secondary level, so let's target it there, and should it prove effective, then we can bring it to the elementary levels, but also expand the number of days at the high school, middle school,
And how many students do you anticipate total in the pilot? So 6 per day, are they seeing counselors weekly, or are you doing 6 cycles next week?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Just because it's only been in place since last week, so I don't have definite data on that, but I can say that it's kind of at the counselor's discretion. There are students whose level of need is once a week, but it may be that there are another student who is once a month. And if that's the case, then you can cycle in more students. But just our parameters are that this counselor can't see any more than 6 students per day, just because the counselor wants to make sure that she has at least 39-minute blocks. So, and the reason for that is so that they can really dive into some, make sure the session is of substance and they have enough time to process it.
Thank you,
very
James.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to take the first topic of the next section, consideration of a contract extension with the superintendent of schools. We'll be looking for any motions that may be offered after we've had 2 executive sessions on this, just to clear that up.
I'd like to make the motion that, given that we just set the contract back at our June meeting, and in essence set some goals that we want to see some progress on, specifically the professionalism at the administration level of the building principals, which relate directly to Peter's guidance, is that we revisit this at the halfway mark.
Okay.
Given that we've really truly only been in school 2 months.
Okay. So a motion to kind of table it for a few months post December, January.
Right, to review at the halfway mark.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? You haven't said anything. Are you abstaining, or?
No, I'm just kind of, yes.
Would you like to make another motion?
No, I don't want to make another motion. No, I was just kind of still, I don't know, letting it all sink in, basically. But no, I agree with the midway mark. And
Thank you.
about January, right? We don't
Yeah.
do it in December.
Correct.
I think, can we just clarify, Jan did a great job, but I just want to reference the specific of what, because this was in the public documents from the June meeting, where as part of it, it's just part of the increase, that there was a goal given of lifting the level of professional performance of leaders at the building, under which you have direct control. And I just wanted to reiterate that that statement, which can be found, back in those June, was it, do you know which month?
It was May or
minutes-wise?
June. It was May or June.
It was June 19th.
June 19th meeting.
That's what Jan was referencing, just that had been discussed, and that was why we wanted to we agreed to kind of table it until a little bit later.
Okay. Moving on, you want to take the next thing?
Yes. The next item, and it's an item that doesn't need to be decided tonight. It's up to the committee if the committee is ready to consider it tonight or not. I said earlier we'd get back to this. It's consideration of the Abington Public Schools' participation in the school choice program for the 1920 school year in accordance with Chapter 71 of the Ed Reform Act. So in your packet you have enrollment data. October 1st marks the date for school systems when the measurement is taken across the Commonwealth. And so that's why I've used this data, the October 1st data. If you go back in what you have from 16, 17 to this just the beginning of this month, we've seen a 136 increase in the total number of students. That is reflective of a 7% increase to our district. If you look at the current grade 11 and 12 at 125 and 106 students, and if that trend, I provided you information in previous meetings about how we're capturing and hanging on to more of our students than ever before in the Abington Public Schools. If that trend continues, you can conservatively estimate, just based on this one variable alone, that we're going to see an increase of approximately 35 students each year if we do nothing else. It doesn't include students moving in to new construction that's going on in Abington. There's no way to know for certain how many students we'll gain through new construction. So an additional step that we've taken is Felicia and I have talked about Felicia's contracting the services of NESDEC, New England Association of Schools and Colleges. They're the people that do the demographic studies for districts, the population studies. So we've contracted them to do a population study. They'll give us predictions on what that construction will provide. That's not a certainty. It's just more data for us to make decisions on in the future. So it's clear that we're seeing a boom and a growth just by hanging on to our kids in the Abington Public Schools. We want to take care of all kids, but we need to be responsible for our students in Abington first and foremost. That's our charge. And so, so we can best take care of these students, my recommendation is that we do not participate in the choice program for this coming school year, the following school year. If you don't opt out of it, you're in it. And so that's why I bring this question to the committee. I'll answer any questions you have. And
I do have a couple questions.
Okay.
This, from 17 to 18, the high school overall increased by 20 students according to this, but I feel like we had, the district increased by 20 from 2030 to
Yep.
2050, if I'm reading this right correctly.
from October 1.
Right, so year to year.
Right. Well, because we did see an increase prior to October 1 that wouldn't necessarily be captured here. I mean, we saw students as we were construction coming in.
Right, but they would be if October to October, we
Yep,
still have the
yep.
same amount of students.
Right.
I just feel like the high school, so if we had year to year 20, increase of 20 students and the high school gained 18, I feel like we had so many more students at the last minute signing up this year, and it was only 20.
Overall, compared to those coming in and going out, from that
So
October 1 to this October 1.
So the natural attrition, we had 20 that actually remained with us. We had others leave.
So for example, last year, the graduating class was 123.
Yep.
The incoming class for ninth grade is 153.
Right.
High school. So there's a
Natural attrition. Yeah. That's what-
Overall, from October 1, 2016, though, we had 91 students enter to Abington High School. So if you go from October 1, 2016 to October 1, 2018, there's been an increase of 91 students.
From 16 to 18.
Right. I was kind of more thinking about the new building.
Yeah.
The
No, I guess that's what I was trying to say previously was everything that happened before October 1st, 2017 is captured in this number. We saw a lot of students enter or transition before that October 1st to get to that 2030 number.
Right, 116. I did the math. So we had 116 from 2016 to 2017 join our district.
Right.
And then this past year, it was only 20.
Right.
Yes, okay. Out of the 172 students that are currently our 8th graders, what's our natural attrition to? I mean, you can have a new building and everything, but there are families that still choose private schools for many different reasons, and those families will still choose private schools. So I'm wondering what's...
At the last meeting, I provided the committee information on, that goes back to the late 90s, where you can estimate the trend was 30%-ish.
30%.
And then in the last 2 years, it was 15%, and then round up, it's 11%, leaving to attend other educational experiences, whether it's the vocational school or a private
So about
school.
13% if we took our last
Yeah.
year's
Yeah,
average.
about 13%, which is historically per capita the lowest in decades. I mean, ever since we started recording it.
Right.
And there's no reason to believe that's not going to carry on with these two smaller classes leaving and these larger classes coming. And
So
especially
it's-
because now we're blue ribbon status, and we've got a laptop initiative, and
So expect about, give or take, 17 to 20 students.
I would estimate 30 per year.
30 per
increase.
year would go to
Would
other
stay
rep.
with us. Would leave? No, I would say
No, it's got to be lower.
between
About 20,
about
about 20,
18
Jan, you're
is
right.
the last year's experience.
Yeah, so I'm saying
Twelve,
anywhere
yeah.
from 17 to 20. If
Yep.
10% is a low, that would be like 17.2 students are going to leave us. So this number, I'm trying to figure out, so this number would be about, give or take, in the high 160s for incoming freshmen, if we're at 172.
Yep. Which is, yep.
And this is something that we vote on every year, so it's a yearly thing to consider.
We're required under that statute that I mentioned.
Right.
Well, you don't have to vote it, but if you don't vote it, it's a yes.
Right.
Does anybody have any other questions?
Yep, I'm not done. And I'm just, the early education program, I'm assuming that's a typo. That means they're here, right? Center school's not open
Yeah,
anymore.
that's not
Okay.
center school.
All right. So we have 90 students.
Used to be sent to school.
No, I'm just saying, I just want to make sure. So we have 90 this year, 82 last year, and does that is just in this building?
Correct.
That's what we're considering the early education, correct?
Correct. A class of 26, 29, 26, and 9.
Another way to look at the high school numbers for next school year is if, like you said, if 17 or 20%, or 10 to 15% don't come back, that's going to be 150-ish.
I wrote 165, but.
Even if it's 150,
Yeah,
you're adding 44
50,
kids to the
From
high
when they
school.
leave, right.
yep.
Well, I had said conservatively, you're going to see at least 30 each year for the next 2 years.
Yep, and those upcoming classes are really big.
And is there concern that we can't fit those students as is?
We're going to be back here during budget time and ask you for teachers for them.
Do we have the rooms to put those teachers in?
Yes, we have to find, well, the class sizes increase, yep. Teachers aren't necessarily have a designated room right now. They share rooms, they move around. So we would have to continue with that.
I think those are my only questions that I have.
Does anybody else have anything? I will make a motion to opt out of the school choice program for the 2020 school year.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
I will agree that, and we definitely would revisit, or the committee would revisit it next year.
Every year.
Is there any opposed? There's no opposed, right? Okay, thank you.
You have, the next item, you have an announcement about American Education Week, November 12th to 16th. Nothing required there. And
Report of the Assistant Superintendent, Felicia.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have 3 items for you tonight. The first one is the FY 2020 budget development article and planning schedule. A couple things of note, budget packets have been sent out for to begin planning for FY 20's budget, and we will be holding meetings in December with department heads and directors and principals around their requests, and have a preliminary budget to present in the January 8th school committee meeting. And prior to that, we'll meet with the Business and Finance Subcommittee and put together a preliminary budget. So, so this goes through the months and what happens in the different months, and I'd be looking for a motion to approve the budget development schedule.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you. And the second item that I have for you tonight is around school bus transportation. As you know, we spend shy of $1 million each year on our school bus transportation, and that's something that goes out to be competitively bid. We, in the last number of years, have gone out with Whitman-Hanson and developed a regional collaborative bus contract. With Whitman-Hanson, it helps us both in our bus contracts because we have a greater number of buses that run. So we are currently in year 3 of a 3-year contract, and included in the 3-year contract was an option for years 4 and year 5. And you'll see about halfway, 3/4 of the way down that page, when you first go out to bid and you have a new bus contract, you have no idea what the increase is going to be, and we actually did pretty well with 9.84% in year 1 of this contract. I've seen some that are almost 20%. And so in the optional years for this contract, it's 2.5% for FY20 and 2.5% for FY21. It's my recommendation that we exercise the 2-year option on this bus contract. I'd be looking for a motion.
Given the 9%, you thought 9% was good, I think 2.5 is really good. It's like a fiscally sound proposal.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor of it? Aye.
Thank you. I have a couple of items to update you on in the school building committee update. The first one is we went out for bid for wooden guardrail for the front, we'll call it lawn, yard, field out front. Those bids came in last week in the parameters that we believed that those bids would come in at. The bid has been awarded to Highway Systems of Rockland. It's going to look like the wooden guardrail that's around the back of the building. It's similar to that with breaks throughout it so that people can walk through. It can also be used to sit on when watching events. And it's anticipated, we'll have a kickoff meeting for that next week, so it's anticipated that you'll start seeing that being constructed over the next few weeks prior to the ground freezing. Thank you to Sean Riley and the work that he did around helping to put together that bid. Second item of note is, and I'll have much more information for you at the next school committee meeting, but we have a vendor in town, and it's called, drawing a blank, who is donating a concession stand.
Oh,
it's on 58, I'll think of it in a second.
Precast.
Precast, yes, precast, thank you. I had it.
That's why they sit me here.
And so they've donated the building. There's also a lot of people in town that will be donating their skills in electrical and plumbing and et cetera. I'll have a lot more information for you in the November meeting around all of those donations and accepting or acknowledging the donation. But I did want you to know that that was coming up, and you may see those walls being constructed prior to the next meeting. And
where's it going to go, Felicia? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
so it's going to go, if you're standing in the parking lot looking at the turf fields, it's going to go over on the right-hand side. There's actually a pad there.
Okay. Yeah, I know where. Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
There'll be another pad. There are already, we brought the utilities to there, but then they're under the pad. And there's also going to be a patio area to be able to stand and eat on, because you can't bring food and drink onto the field.
We're going to call it a pavilion.
Pavilion, wow, fancy.
So we're very excited about that.
That is great news.
And the last is a couple of updates I have for you around some issues that we've had in the building that we are actively engaged with the contractors around, but I just wanted you to know about them. The first is I wanted to circle back to the hot water issue. Jason Lynn, the Director of Maintenance, met prior to and after our last school committee meeting around the water temperatures, and we're able to rebalance the system, and since then we've had no other issues around that. So I think that issue is behind us. Unfortunately, we have a few other issues that have faced us since then. And again, I just want to say that we have been, and I'll say actively engaging with both the contractor and the subcontractors around this. The first is around our heating plant, and I'll also say that these issues that we've had are not unusual in new buildings. I will say that's frustrating, and it has taken a lot of time, and it increased both Peter and I's gray hair. But the first is around the heating plant. The heating plant was shut down late spring. We had our maintenance, the company come back in and do the startup for us 2 weeks ago, and then last week when we called for heat, we had problems with the boiler controls, and we never lost heat in the building. And the building actually can be, in this type of weather, can carry with one boiler, and so one boiler would go out and reset, and then 2 others would stay on, and then 2 would go out, and 1 would stay on, and it has been a constant battle that, again, the Director of Maintenance, myself and Peter have been engaged in trying to, well, be arguing with people. So we've had, today, we had the contractor for the boilers and the manufacturer here. They changed out controllers. We kept the building heated, and they ran without tripping so far today. We do have other new controllers that are arriving on Thursday and will be installed, and we've been assured that that's going to fix the problem. So that's been a big challenge. The second one is around a waste pipe that comes out of the middle school office bathroom and the nurse's bathroom, and also ties in with student bathrooms, but we have not seen the issue in student bathrooms yet. The bathroom's been backing up, and we've had the drain company in. We've had them have to flush the drain. We've had the drain cameraed a number of times, and it's been finally determined that there's a significant dip in the pipe, which is causing the backup. So they, again, after numerous meetings, the first attempt to remediate this is to increase the flush water flow in the toilets that are attached to that line. So that's going to happen actually on November 6th. And we'll see if that works, and if that doesn't work, then we'll have to go to a much more significant fix, which will be to replace that dip in the line. And if that were to happen, that wouldn't happen until next summer, because it would mean going into the slab. And in the meantime, we have the contractors paying for the drain company to come out anytime that they're here within 6 hours. It's very frustrating for the office staff, and I thank them for their patience around this. And it is frustrating that you have a new school and you have those kind of problems. But again, through some very difficult conversations, we have, I think, the contractors where they need to be. And I have not watched the video, but apparently the video of the waistline, it's pretty. You can see a significant dip in the line. And also, the other part of the remediation of that is not that it's fixed today, but that 10 years from now, whatever the fix is going to still be that way there. So those are the conversations that we're having around the waste pipe and the boilers.
As Felicia mentioned, the key is being aggressive about fixing these so that they're covered under the warranty and we don't own them later.
And luckily, the meeting notes, I think we're up to meeting 183. The meeting notes are identify these issues, and if they had been identified and remediated a year ago, and it comes back, like the boilers are out of warranty, but we had this issue last year and it was fixed, and we did have a time. So thank God we have very detailed meeting notes from all of our construction meetings, so they're that we can go back to those and they're covered.
It was either fixed or it got warm,
Well,
and they weren't as taxed.
They fixed them. I mean, they changed up the controllers and they worked, and then about a month later, we didn't have heating season anymore. And as soon as we had heating season this year, we had issues with them. So.
There's a theory that was the false alarm, that the fire bell that was called the other day. It's a theory, because the building had to be brought up to temperature, quickly the temperature sensor went off.
Is that everything? Thanks, Felicia.
Thank you.
Next up, establishment of next school committee meeting date, Tuesday, November 27th at 7 p.m. here at the Middle High School Library. I'm going to ask you to do the information if you don't mind.
I have one informational item I just want to bring to your attention. It's just an appreciation to the Abington Fire Department and the chief in the department. I want to thank them and the paramedics, Justin Silva, Catherine Klein, in coordinating the training with their instructors, Jared Driscoll, Derek Hilmadi. Thank you. I should have practiced this before I did it. Adam Levine and Josh Nix. So we did bleeding control kit training on a volunteer basis at each building, and I was at one of the sessions with our coaches, because we included our coaches, and the bleeding control kits are now located with all of our AEDs in the buildings, so that they can be accessed in the event. They can be accessed in the event of an emergency. And so they just did a great job. They did it for us for free, and I just wanted to acknowledge their help. So.
Thank you, and thank you to them as well. Just really quick dates to remember. Tuesday, November 6th is a professional development day for staff, but there is no school for students at all that day. Same evening, Greenway Boosters meeting here at the library at 7 p.m. On Monday, November 12th is Veterans Day observance. All offices and buildings are closed. Wednesday, November 14th, National Honor Society induction at the Middle High School auditorium at 6:30 p.m. Do you know if is AF doing their thing for sure?
AF, I just got the building used today.
So Abington Education Foundation is going to be having a fundraiser. It's going to be a cornhole tournament, adults and children teams for the most part. It's scheduled for November 18th, which is a Sunday here in the gym at the high school. There will be information going out about that soon. It's broken up by grades and times and so on, so more to come on that.
9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m.
9 a.m. to 3:30. I know it's broken up different grade levels at different times. On Wednesday, November 21st, half day, beginning at Thanksgiving break. As such, the 22nd and 23rd, all offices and buildings are closed. As I mentioned, our next meeting is Tuesday, November 27th. And last thing, I just wanted to mention good luck to the high school football team as they prepare and start their playoffs on Friday evening at 7 p.m. against Bourne, I believe, right?
Yes.
So, at home, yes, at home.
At home.
That is all I had.
I think the only other thing for dates to remember, the junior class auction, I believe, is November 30th.
Okay.
It's in November this year. Junior class auction is November 30th?
Yes, November 30th.
Friday, November 30th.
Okay. So junior class auction Friday, November 30th. Thank you,
Here at
Jeanette.
the high school.
Downstairs in the cap, okay.
All are welcome.
Thank you. Looking for a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did.